Makes sense. Time for
Next.
Yes. Well, only just, yeah.
You do. You have 2 minutes and 37 seconds.
2 minutes. Well, just in case you didn't hear Lori, we're not discussing this beach street house tonight.
Say that again?
Dana, can you hear us
We're not
okay?
gonna discuss anything about this. street
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
tonight.
Who sets the agenda?
Uh,
And Day and I did get those documents to the
It's
right
not on
person,
the
so you're
agenda.
good.
That's why Lori doesn't.
Thank you, Christian.
She doesn't want people to construe it as being a meeting about something they don't know about.
Yeah, I got a letter from someone who said we had a secret meeting about it. And so we're being a little bit sensitive, but I wrote her back and said, there's no such thing. We've never had a secret meeting. We'll never have a secret meeting.
And are you gonna make the motion to add the resolution? to
So if I
the
wanted to express.
Someone, yes, I'll do that. Well, it's on the agenda.
No, it's
I
not.
think you have that ability. I think
Okay,
Lori was.
gotcha.
saying
Then
she
yes.
didn't want to step
Somebody
in
needs
to swirl
It's
into
it's a
that.
housekeeping matter.
But
That's time
I
sensitive.
think you have the right and the.
I looked at it online, and I was like, why are
We're the
some special meetings, there's nothing being voted on, and then,
Yeah.
It was
we have-
because it might.
It's a time sensitive thing, and we'll explain it.
Yeah.
And I
Where
think
did you
it
come
posted
in?
as a special
No.
meeting. so
Meeting.
cover my-
Because Tracy, there's
What?
always something.
yeah.
Because there's always.
I figured there
Right,
was
I certainly
something,
think
but it
you
wasn't
can.
on the online.
Are you?
I mean, I
Yeah,
can do it at a
space to
regular
speak.
meeting, that's fine. I think that might be better suited.
This is a publicly posted meeting.
Up on a Tuesday, say, don't come to our meetings.
No, that's a good point.
We
should just post that
Yeah, sure.
every Tuesday at 6.
Probably a meeting.
Pretty much what I do.
Oh, no. It's not meeting for one thing, it's for another.
Okay, with all respect to everybody's time, it is now 6 o'clock and I will call this special meeting of the Leadville City Council of Tuesday, April 26, 2022 to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Tharp,
Present.
Councilmember Fergency,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Green,
Here.
Councilmember Luna Leo,
Here.
Councilmember Hill,
Present.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Here,
Mayor Labby.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we're going to ask for the approval of the agenda. I do need to add a 7A to the agenda. It is Resolution 13 of 2022 to enter into a municipal lease purchase agreement with NHB Bank for the purchase of one street sweeper for the street department. I will entertain a motion to add that to the agenda and anything else that somebody would like to add.
Member Tharp moves to approve the agenda with the addition of 7A for the city council special meeting of Tuesday, April 26, 2022.
Luna Loud seconds.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. All were in favor. At this time, we have housekeeping matters. Anything anybody would like to talk about?
I would just like to make a quick point of clarification about the fact that we've been about 809 Spruce Street. We're not going to be talking about this tonight. Is that what I hear?
Right, it's not on the agenda to discuss tonight. If you would like to have a special meeting to discuss it, we can schedule that.
Well, we could, I mean, it is part of a housekeeping matters too. Can't we bring it up in housekeeping matters?
Well, I think I would prefer it to be agendized because I think there probably are members of the public who would like to be present if we are debating or discussing it. And so that's, I think there was, I think to be very transparent, if we are going to debate or discuss 809 Spruce, we should agendize it so that the public could be present if they would choose.
Okay, and then for the record, what I would like to say is I would like to put that on the agenda for next week's regular meeting in regard to my disappointment in the need to have moved so quickly with 2 of our city council members not present at that meeting and an executive session. And the fact that we're here at goal setting, and even on today's meeting, we're looking at in the last month, spending over $1 million of city council or the city's funds. And I don't know how many years the Leadville, city of Leadville's been around. How many years have we been here?
142.
142 years. We made a decision, in my opinion, that was a good idea for workforce housing, which is in much need, I agree, but perhaps short-sighted. If you told me what we could do for $795,000 when it comes to workforce housing, I think we could have come up with 6 or 10 more different ways of spending that money, perhaps in a better
I
way.
appreciate that. We will discuss it on the next city council agenda meeting.
I'm just saying that for the record and why. Especially being in the ward 3 blocks down from that, it's been on my mind since the last meeting when I learned about it, and it hasn't been sitting with me. Right, I trust everybody in this council to make the right decisions. And I know that there was a reason why you made that, and so I'm not against how that came out, and I wasn't here, right? And so that decision has been made, but I just want to express my disappointment in the fact that here we are in a strategic planning meeting, and the fact that we went and spent or are planning to spend a quite amount on a house that perhaps isn't the best fit for our needs right now.
Thank you. Any other housekeeping matters?
I would just mention, I think most of you have probably heard about the Jimmy John's parade that happened.
Yeah.
And there were quite a few problematic things with that, right? One of which was, as I was walking around downtown that day, all the restaurants around it were empty and they were open. And I feel for those business owners. I want to share enthusiasm for everyone who got a free sandwich and was excited about that. But I sure was feeling for those business owners and employees who didn't get a whole lunch's worth of salary basically that day.
I'll go a little further. I was pretty ticked off.
Yeah, so can I address
Well,
that?
but let me first,
Yeah.
that same afternoon, or maybe that evening, I sent a note to CDOT, because CDOT said, you can't do that. And that's what they had told me, and I brought that to city council, even though Jimmy John's had withdrawn their TUP, and CDOT was gonna say no anyway. So I sent a whole note to CDOT saying, here's what happened, here's what we did, here's what they did, and here's the contact information for these people. Now, I don't know if CDOT's gone anywhere with that. And then I'll let Lori talk about maybe, our next move, but I wanted CDOT to know that these people had done that in non-compliance to our city regulations. Lori, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sure. And just briefly, since we want to make sure we have enough time to talk about goals, but the issue was that Jimmy John's and their marketing company put in an application for a temporary use permit. It was on the city council agenda and they pulled it from the agenda apparently that same day, correct? Okay. So they had an application in, told us what their plans were, and then pulled the request. Then went ahead the next day and had the parade and event that they did not have a temporary use permit for. And I found out because Councilmember Tharp sent me a video of it, and I immediately called the organizer on her phone and basically said, this is not how we do business in Leadville. this, you planned this, you had a permit in, you pulled it, and then you went ahead and did the parade. So I discussed with her our profound disappointment in this marketing stunt and that it was not good for our community. It's not the kind of marketing that they want to portray, that they knew the rules and then went ahead and violated them. And I told her that our city attorney was out of the office, but I would be addressing with her on Monday, and I did. I've addressed it with our city attorney, and she is working on it right now. And without getting into attorney-client privilege, we are going to address this issue with the company and or the marketing firm as strongly as we can.
I would make one more comment. They blatantly lied on their permit request. So, you know, anyway, it was bad news all the way around.
And we
How did they lie?
They never said anything that this was a 420 marijuana event.
Oh, yeah, I saw that
Yeah.
the whole stunt was, it was 420 and they wanted to be in the highest city in the
Yeah.
country.
And I specifically asked them why Leadville, because
They're
Lauren and I
not
were
here.
afraid that it might be a 420 thing. So I specifically asked them and they told me it was an ad campaign to get people who don't normally get Jimmy John's a taste. So they blatantly lied to me. And I have emails back where they canceled the parade 5 minutes after I sent the council packet out. They called me that afternoon, Friday, after I sent it out and said, we're taking our parade off. So I sent them an approval that said, no, I mean, it's spelled out alphabet to Christiana as well. So they were very, very untruthful.
So
And I asked specific questions and they still like.
yeah, we will be addressing this as strongly as we can.
I would
Okay.
just make a point.
Oh,
that
please.
It wasn't about the highest city, it was about the highest people.
Well, I think that was
They actually
inferred.
had T-shirts made up and handed them to the dispensary people. Because I had a friend of mine text me that day and said, I got to come see my T-shirt. So whenever it says, I got high and ate Jimmy John's in the highest city in Leadville, Colorado. So they even had T-shirts made up, so they knew.
Shirts.
And
I
then a sign that
officially
said,
go on
"Yes."
record saying, what a bunch of jerks.
Yes, they were.
Is that recorded? I second that motion.
No, actually, I was guiding on the rivers on this occasion.
Oh, hi, Dana.
Hi, I also have a question. Just to piggyback onto the general discussed with how everything went down. But if they are giving away food out of a trailer, I'm wondering if they also need some sort of health department clearance, just like we require of our food vendors at Boom Days.
They
To have-
did.
They did, and they got it. They had an inspection that day, so they were involved the whole time.
They got the rules right on that part, just not on our part.
All right. Any other thoughts on Jimmy John's? I've never had a Jimmy John's. Now I'm never going to have one.
I'm also thinking we should use this as an opportunity to look ahead for how to deal with formula businesses who want to host something on a private lot like that was.
You
in
know,
our-
I agree. That was the point Tracy was making at that time. And, you know, then when I thought about what Tracy said, I said, that's exactly right. Why would we entertain, you know, a formula business in downtown when it's in contradiction to everything we've done? So, yeah, thank you, Dana. I agree. Okay.
My only concern is, and I'll bring it up now, we're talking about formula businesses, is if you're part of, let's say, one of the Lifetime Fitness events, what happens when Specialized or whatever comes up? And I mean, we can't have Specialized is within that event?
It's a very good point. And you made that point last time. And I,
They're outside the formula overlay.
well,
They're using the parking lot.
they're
But I
not,
would
you
wish
know,
to be a parking lot.
no,
They're actually, aren't they outside?
no, they're
Oh,
not.
no, they are.
Yeah, because it goes to Poplar.
Well, one thing I would say to that is, I would say that Specialized isn't necessarily a formula business, but it's a brand. right, that certain stores carry.
That's an interesting point. I hate to get down that rabbit hole, you know. I think we have to be thoughtful when this comes in front of us, to the degree that that's possible and that we're being fair.
Jamba Juice.
Okay, but that is good points. Thank you. All right. At this time, we have a resolution in front of us. Donna, would you explain real quickly why we're doing this, and we'll get on with it.
Okay, so last November, we had, you guys had approved to purchase a sweeper for the street department. So last November, I got the rates. I did the resolution to get that approved for budget. So then I had been informed that the street sweeper is going to be here in now 2 weeks. So I contacted NBH Bank and I told them, you know, I had the mayor sign the paperwork and we sent it off, and they informed me that the rate has went up. The financing has went up. So Lori argued with them because it was originally going to be 4 point something %. And she argued with them that because I was under the understanding that that rate was going to be good until the sweeper came in. That was the conversation I had with them, but I don't have anything in writing on that. So Lori did get it down a little bit. So, but it's going to be, the financing is going to be different. So we had to do a new resolution. The sweeper is going to be here in 2 weeks. It's probably less than 2 weeks now. So it was kind of a rush thing of trying to get this presented to you because the price has now, not the price of the sweeper, but the cost of the loan has gone up about $8,000.
Over how many years?
5 years.
5 years. Thank you.
So the payment was going to be $4,766.54. It is now going to be $4,906.20
Okay.
a month
Thank you.
for 5 years. So
And just, this is an unfortunate situation. There was an email string back and forth where Donna was corresponding with the bank about several pieces of equipment. And I even found the email string confusing because there were discussions on 3 different pieces of equipment. And there was a sentence in there that said from the bank, you know, these are the rates right now. I can't guarantee them, but I don't see them going up much. So there was definitely a confusing email string about the rate, but the bottom line is rates have gone up since then. So we went back to the bank and said, look, we understand rates have gone up. We're a good client of yours. This is it's an unfortunate misunderstanding. What can you do for us? So they had originally quoted, I think, when Donna went back to him and said, okay, we're ready to do the financing, they said, you know, the rate's gone up and it was 4.05. And after talking to them today, they've gotten it down to 3.8%. Oh, and yeah, so just so you know, Donna did do some legwork. Another bank gave a quote at 4.51%. So I think, given the circumstances, 3.8% is as good as we're going to get at this moment. So this is a housekeeping matter, so we can go ahead and finance the sweeper before it gets here.
Any questions for staff?
So this, just to clarify, this was budgeted for in this year's budget or last year's budget?
it was budgeted
Okay.
because the payments are going to be a little bit more. It may fall out of the budget a little bit, but I had it scheduled to start it in April. So we're probably not going to start paying for it until June. So it's probably going to be right in line with budget.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. If there are any more questions, please ask them. If not, I would entertain a motion, please.
Councilmember Luna Leal moves to adopt resolution number 13, series 2022, a resolution authorizing the city of Leadville to enter into a municipal lease purchase agreement with the NBH Bank for lease and purchase of one street sweeper for the street department purposes.
Tharp seconds.
Is there any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Yes.
Councilmember Hill.
Yes.
Councilmember Luna Leal.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Green.
Yes.
Councilmember Fergency.
Yes.
Councilmember Tharp.
Yes.
Mayor Lovey.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for your consideration. Thank you, Donna, for your hard work. I know that was a bit of a hassle. Okay. At this time, we're going into goal setting. Lori, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. So I wanted to do this for a number of reasons, but I wish we had done this sooner, but it is never too late to set priorities. I wanted to let you know for next year, I've already talked to Christy Dune, who's our Department of Legislative Affairs representative, about when we should start a goal setting process ideally. And so we're going to do this goal setting now, but then you're going to see this summer another goal setting for 2023. And so what if we had, in a perfect world, we would have started this and along Christie's recommendation in the summer of 2022 before we do budget, so that then we're ready to drop come January 1 with our goals. And so I wasn't here then, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. So we're here to look at the rest of 2022. And what I would say is I'm going to ask the same question I asked when I met with you all one-on-one, which is really what I would like to know and we would like to know is, come the end of 2022, when you look back, what would we like to have accomplished? Whether it's big things or little things, what are our priorities? Because I think sometimes we need to do housekeeping items and we need to do, perhaps a DUP or a CUP, but we don't want to get lost in the shuffle and not come to the end of 2022 and accomplish some of the things that we want to. And so with that framework, I want to just talk about the goal setting, my ideal for coming out of this meeting. I think I would consider this meeting a success if we came out with 3, 5, maybe 10 items. 10 is a lot that city council would like to see accomplished. My goal would be probably 5, around 5-ish. And what I'd like to do is, if you've ever heard of SMART goals, those are goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. I don't think it's helpful for us to have a goal of housing. That's not helpful. What do we want to do about housing? What would we like to do in 2022? So that goal would need to be something specific, but I would say probably the most important was achievable. What can we do in 2022 if we want to do something on housing? Keeping in mind this summer, we're going to talk about 2023. And if we need to do 5-year goal planning and so forth, we can, but this is just focusing on the rest of this year. What do we want to try and do? And so, what I can do and we can decide on the format. I wanted to leave this format kind of loose because it is just now it's a work session to have an open discussion, and we can do it however you like. I have all of the comments from when we each met one-on-one, but I think maybe we can do it a couple of ways. We can go with each council member and we can have each council member talk about maybe 3 goals that they think that are important. It doesn't matter if they're the same as everyone else. You can talk about 3, and then we can discuss how those shake out. If that's a list of a lot, or maybe it's 3 common ones or several common ones that we whittle down. but that was my idea, but this is a forum rather than a more formal city council meeting. So I wanted to throw that out first and say, for just throwing out the sort of host of goals that we might consider and start looking at, how do we want to do it? Do we want to go each council member, or we just want to do a free form, speak up and the mayor calls on you? What is everyone's preference?
I think we should start out free form.
Okay.
Just anybody who throws out ideas
Great.
and then maybe we'll go to a round table once people have had a chance. Yeah, Tracy.
I'm ready to start.
So what my proposal is, I will take notes. We can do it a couple of ways. I can handwrite notes, or we can do a shared screen once we get to a couple and we can have them so people can actually see the goals. But for right now, I'll handwrite.
I think for housing right now, we've been given 5 units in phase 2. And John has offered to give us 5 units, trade us for 5 units in phase 1. I think we need to make that decision so we can start moving ahead with that.
Also, he wants to plat it. So I think
Okay.
he wants to
So
know
that's-
what we
I
want
think
to
that's
do.
a big priority.
Okay, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And that will probably, we did phase 1 to the URA. This one is
Yeah, it belongs to
with
the
the
city.
city.
Yeah.
And so, I was thinking in terms of URA when I was first thinking about it. Remember, I wanted that on the agenda for the URA, and then I realized, no,
Yeah.
that was
belongs to
wrong.
the city.
So I would like, maybe one other person or 2 other people to join me to sit down and look at the maps with John and decide what we're going to do, because we had talked about maybe doing a 5-plex on a smaller piece of
Right.
property so we don't have to pay so much. And that was a thought that I had, but you had said, well, maybe we should take the 5 lots and put homes on each of the 5 lots. So that's part of like a subcommittee where we need to decide, okay, what are we asking from John? And then let's nail it down. How does that sound to everybody?
I agree.
Tracy?
Okay, so just so I understand, the goal is to, well, there's potentially 2 things. There's step 1, create the subcommittee, correct? Because we don't have a subcommittee right now.
No. that's-
Okay, so 1 would be create, okay. And then the purpose of the subcommittee is to come up with a recommendation.
Yeah, identify the 5 units from HCD that he has donated to the city.
Okay. And come up with a recommendation to the council. Great. And then I think that we can have mayor and 1 council member, but I don't think we can we have 3?
Three's not a
That's-
quorum.
Yeah, so we
That's
would have to,
That's a very good point.
Well,
Well, it's not a
so-
quorum, but it is under sunshine
Okay.
law. It can't be more than 2. That's right. Or a quorum.
right,
So,
or you could
Yeah,
create, the
because
sub- so maybe you could do,
because the county commissioners, a quorum is 2. So they
Right.
can't even do that.
so you could do the subcommittee and have it be more people. It just could be people from the community, or it could be other than mayor and a council member.
I'm open to suggestions, but I do feel as Tracy does, that we need to go forward with this and really sit down with John and walk the property and nail it down, whatever we're gonna do.
I don't think it's a bad idea to have it with maybe 2 council members, the mayor and another council member and some community member that we see as a housing expert. I know we have a fair amount of housing experts around the community.
Okay, so I think we can do this a couple of ways. We could, so the next city council agenda is pretty full and getting fuller, but we could do, but timing wise, is it like the one smart, the T in the SMART goal is time bound. So just getting an idea of when we want to have this subcommittee. We can put it on the agenda for the 2nd meeting in May, and you can have a discussion of who's on the, what community member will, what are the number of members, how often you want them to meet, what the purpose, so we could put that on the agenda for the May 17th meeting.
I mean, I'm fine with that.
Shoot. Sounds great.
What?
Great.
Just throwing a name out, Christy Galarza, maybe you should be a part of that.
I think
Glad we're on the same page.
the housing director should be a part of
Mm.
it. She should be
Yeah.
at every meeting now.
I agree with that too. So maybe it's a few more people.
Christie and
Yeah.
Jackie and two people in city council. So is that okay?
I think that sounds good.
Who would like to do it?
I am open to it if no one else is.
Tracy? What's that?
Dana's hand is up.
Dana's hands up as
Dennis,
well.
hands up.
Well, maybe we don't need to put it on the agenda. If you want to create, then do the
Yeah,
subcommittee now.
Let's do it now. Let's.
Move it on.
Oh, in terms of selecting a committee?
Well, it sounds like you're proposing ideas and
Okay.
people, like we can.
No, I think we need to do that because we need to be able to present to city council, what we want to do and get buy-in to that to go forward.
Yeah, so I think you can extend invitations to whomever you choose. I wouldn't appoint them without their consent, but certainly I think you can invite them, and I suspect those people would be welcome. to
Well, then
join.
can I suggest Tracy and Christian? I don't want to leave Dane out, and then Christie and Jackie. How's that sound?
You don't want to do it?
Oh, well, I'd be happy to do it, but if you guys want to do it, I don't have to. That's all,
My plate's pretty full. You can, I'll let you do it.
No, my plate, oh, no. I'd be glad to,
Okay.
I've been pretty involved in it. So
Yeah.
if Christian and I can do that, and then we have Jackie and Christie, which I'm sure they'll be glad to, and then we'll have to set a meeting, and I would like to set it on site with John. We could have the maps and everything, but walking around makes a huge difference in terms of understanding what we're doing. Is that okay with everybody?
Dana, is that good with you?
Dana, you okay with that?
Yes, I'm just fine.
All right, thank you.
So we are trying to come up with perhaps 3 to 5 goals that we want to accomplish in fiscal year 22.
Correct?
Okay, and that could be one. And I think it's a good one. I like it.
How soon should we inform Christy before I send her a text?
You can, I think, extend it. I think this is something that's relatively time sensitive. So yeah, I wouldn't maybe send her a text in the meeting, but maybe after the meeting.
Sure, I'll
yeah.
wait.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so the subcommittee is in formation. We will extend invitations to 2 people. And the purpose of the subcommittee is to identify the 5 units from High Country Developers that he has donated to the city and make a recommendation to the city council. Sounds like we don't need it to be put on, thanks, Donna.
Thank you, Donna.
To be put on the agenda to create the subcommittee, or perhaps, what we could do is we could put it on the agenda to just notify, or we could do it in your reports or my reports to say, who the subcommittee is. if
Well,
they've
but I
accepted.
think by the second week, second meeting in May, we need to make a very defined
Yeah.
recommendation.
And I
Here's
imagine
what
that's
we
realistic.
recommend, here's what we think we should do, and see if city council buys in, and if we do, then away we go.
So this is the recommendation you want on the next, on that.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
The
please.
17th, okay, gotcha.
And I think that's fairly realistic.
Okay, thanks.
So, Mayor, if I may.
Please.
So one thing about what we just discussed, which I think is a great idea, right, is that if we were to think about, so I think about this as goal setting, I think about it as strategic planning, right? And if you think about what strategic planning is, you're developing a plan of action or policy designed to achieve a major or overall aim. And so our major overall aim with a strategy is to develop more affordable housing so like, that's the big strategy. The tactic is what we just talked about, right? That's one point of what we're trying to achieve, right? And so I know there's many others, and so I'm hoping that there's other bin items that could fall under the strategic goal of creating more workforce housing, right? If that's it, because we just came up with a tactic.
I would agree with that, but correct me if I'm wrong, Lori. I think we're talking more about things we can actually accomplish, not necessarily big vision items and strategic planning so much as let's talk about what would we like to look back at the end of this year and feel like we actually accomplished,
That
as
makes
opposed
sense.
to strategic planning.
So I guess my thought is considering we're halfway through 22 already, I would entertain that we should probably come up with this strategic plan or start developing a strategic plan for fiscal year 23 before we start goal setting for the next,
I
like
think
you
more-
were talking about it before,
Yeah.
about how before we go to budget, right? We have those things, we want to have that goal setting meeting for fiscal year 23.
Right,
Okay.
that's what I covered the first part, is
Yes.
that we're behind the 8 ball right now, so this work session looks different than it should.
Correct.
What it is you are looking at a very short time period to do things, so big, long-range aspirational goals are probably not what we're gonna accomplish on a to-do list tonight. But it should be, the process should be, you look at those strategic goals in the summer, you're looking at goal setting in the summer to put those together before your budget, so you're ready to drop come January 1 for 2023.
Yep.
We're on a shortened version right now, so I think we might come up with more tactics than strategic planning, because frankly, we may not have the time.
I guess my thought is that perhaps considering this is about affordable housing, that we should put that in a strategic, just say, hey, we know that one of our strategic goals way down is to have more affordable housing. One of the tactics that we want to accomplish this year in fiscal year 22 is to do what Tracy proposed and everybody is unanimous about. And to be perfectly honest, I mean, I came in, we're here hopefully for a little bit more, but this is exactly where I fell in with my new position on the Pike San Isabel as a land program manager. It's been vacant for a decade, and I came in October, and still up to this date, April 26th, they're still talking about what our program of work is at the leadership team for fiscal year 22 with 2 quarters left, ending September 28th. What I'm trying to do is right size that, and my own goal is, so just before I left for my trip, I finally presented what we think we can get done with the last 2 quarters of this. And then ultimately it feeds into our fiscal year 23, very similar to what we're doing.
Right.
It's different because it starts October 1. But what I'd like to do is to make sure everybody has their marching orders come October 1, and we have all our funding and we know where we're going to put our money and allocate our resources when we have them, just like you're saying right here. So I just want to, I mean, I guess it's just my brain and how it processes is that, like, if we're talking about what we want to accomplish, I just want to make sure that we're feeding the next conversation we were having for fiscal year 23.
We would agree with you, and Lori and I have talked about that, and Christy Doom is willing to come and facilitate that meeting. We haven't decided on kind of a time frame. I mean, I was thinking August, to your point.
She was proposing June.
Well.
Yeah, so she
quarter.
wants to get us going
And
or
that's okay
sooner
with me,
rather
but-
than
but
later, so
To your
yes.
point, we had discussed that
Yep.
as a secondary, actually a primary consideration, but this meeting wasn't that.
That's fine.
But we do want a facilitator for that meeting.
I do want to make sure that, I mean, I just, and to that point, and sorry, I'm talking, I didn't have any coffee, anything with caffeine. Actually, I had a Coca-Cola at lunch.
That was it.
And I went for a run before this meeting. But one thing that I would like to present as a strategy is to develop and retain a sustainable city team that has the bandwidth to respond to our constituents' need and maintain a healthy work-life balance. And so that's the strategy, is I want to make sure that we're developing and retaining a sustainable city team that has a bandwidth to respond to all of our needs and our constituents. That's the strategy. Now I'm asking people, like, what do we want to do? I mean, we have a city administrator right now, but like, what else can we do that we can get more bandwidth today that is going to make it so people want to work for this and stay here in the city? And I don't know what that answer is, but that's my thought. We should definitely do some work on that.
I think you're hitting so the State of the City event, I talked about two, you've hit the top two. The two primary things are housing and worker retention for the city. And I have an idea that I would like to present to you at the next city council meeting about employee retention. But I think I said in one of the council meetings, I've had more conversations asking people to stay at a workplace than I've ever had in my life. And we are in a market where it is an employees market where there are more opportunities than workers. And we're in a tough place because we're a municipality and we have fiscal constraints that other businesses might not have. And we have very wealthy neighbors who can pay more and pay enough to make people willing to drive. So, well, and I'll tell you that one of my crises things that I talked to the mayor about doing this morning is we have an HR consultant, Elaine Alberding, and I have talked to her about doing a salary assessment because I'm told by some people, well, I'm not paid what the market is paying, or I'm not paid what comparable job in fill in the blank X place. But we don't have the analysis to know if that's true or not. And we as a staff don't have the bandwidth or the expertise to do that analysis. And so I would like to retain our HR consultant to do two things. One, give us analysis of our salaries and give us recommended pay bands for specific positions. So entry level, no experience, you're at the bottom of the pay band, it's the GS levels in the federal government, very similar to that. And your higher pay bands, like if you come in with 15 years of experience and a college degree and 4 licenses, you might end up in the higher end of the pay band. So to look at our wages and see if they're competitive and recommend pay bands and changes if necessary. And the second thing is we need to do an audit. The Equal Pay for Equal Work Act in Colorado required us to do a salary audit to make sure that we do not have gender disparity in pay for the same position with the comparable skills. We have not yet done that audit, so we need to do that audit, and she can do that audit and give us a letter certifying that the audit has been completed. So that is something who has been on my top to-do list because we are potentially going to lose more. I mean, I had a phone call right before this meeting that there are 2 more people who are potentially going to leave. And we are in constant crisis mode trying to retain workers. And if they're competitively paid here and we're not in the position to raise their wages, then we have to just say, I'm sorry, we might lose those people. But if we're losing them because we're not competitive and we could be competitive, then I think sort of shame on us for.
The tax.
Please.
So on that point, I did want to address this as well as part of our goal plan setting is to really, and it sounds like, something's already being done about it, but to really look at wages and have that be something we compare to, because that's also what I hear, not just the city level, but also just at the general local level. I know that there's a huge employment or lack of employees crisis right now in the city. And I think part of that has to do with salary, and part of that also has to do with outreach, both of which I think we should really address, maybe at the city level, just at the city level, but maybe it looks like a minimum wage. And I know we've had these discussions and there might be disagreements, but I still think that it's something that we should vehemently discuss to see if this is the right way to move forward. Obviously, there's going to be agreements and disagreements, but I think that's fine. And we should have that discussion and see what it really looks like and fleshed out. So I think that we should at some point have that on our agenda to really discuss what it looks like increasing the minimum wage at the citywide level is, and in our own personal budgets that we allocate money to our city employees. That was one of my goal settings for that would be going into 2023 since we'll be sending the budget for that.
And I'd just like to say, I mean, and we all know this, but I mean, Summit County, Olive, Breckenridge, Frisco, Silverthorne, Dillon, Eagle, Vale, they have such a massive tax base. I mean, that is, the cost of the homes over there is, I mean, a home here costs $500,000 in town or $700,000. A home in Breckenridge costs $2.3 million, the same house, right? And that's the difference of how much difference it is. And so, I mean, as much as we have to be competitive, we also have to make sure that we're not going to break our budget as well. So there's a fine line of where that is.
And I think so my goal is a couple things. For some positions, we're not going to compete with the wages. But I think if you have a good work culture, if you have a good place to work, people enjoy their jobs, they're feeling satisfied with their work, they enjoy their colleagues, and they're happy at work, they may be offered a couple bucks more at a different job and not take it. It's a multifaceted, but I think, right now we have a lot of burnout. We have a lot of burnout because we've been on, there are a lot of vacant positions. And so the goal is to get those positions filled. And I appreciate you all approving a planning director position, because I think that we need to prevent burnout so that we can create people having work satisfaction. And then I think you're right, maybe we're not competitive with with salary. I'm pretty sure we're not going to be, but if we're close and we create a good work culture, people, and if they're going to leave for the money, they're going to leave for the money. And that may just be the case, but I want to be competitive enough so that if we have a couple of factors, we're not losing people.
I'd like to make a comment. As a city and a community resource, we're a community resource. Our community depends on us to take care of them. There is nothing more important than our human capital. All the fire trucks and street department equipment in the world won't save you if people don't work here. And so, I felt we've done it. I'll give us kudos. We have worked hard the last 3 years to get pay up, and we've brought up pay, I think, pretty dramatically in the last 3 years. We're still not there. And part of that is because, I felt really good about the fire department. We gave those guys almost 6% raise. Well, guess what? Inflation was 5.9% at the end of the year. So what did we accomplish? Nothing. So that's really frustrating right now to think we can fight this battle, but it might be a losing battle just based on inflation. So, but back to my original point, there's nothing more important than the people who work here.
Agreed.
I'll leave it at that.
Agreed. So when we think about tactics, back to it, I mean, I know we're going to put on the street a planning director position, correct? Is there any other iterative processes that we as a city would like to see when it comes to, I mean, I know you'll have a presentation next week, I believe, when it comes to retaining.
I have an idea, and part of it is I want to talk to each of you individually about this idea, but I have an idea for employee retention. And I think we need to triage this. I constantly get phone calls from department heads that we are potentially losing people. And I think we have an opportunity, two things, that housing and labor are intertwined. And I think we're obviously acknowledging that housing needs to be worked on and employee retention as well. So yes, and the salary assessment. So the two things, the salary assessment, I would like to have done. And our consultant says she can do that in about 3 weeks, which is great. Wish it could be happened sooner. I may ask her if she can do it sooner, but that's great. That's faster than we could ever possibly do it. And probably better data than we can ever get. So that salary assessment, and then yes, I have an idea for employee retention. So yes, but any other ideas? This is
I mean, I was just thinking about Chief Daly and how he just knows he can't compete against West Metro. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And so sometimes you have to understand where your seat is in certain things too, because we'll never be, if she's going to pull data from Red, White, and Blue over in Breckenridge and West Metro, we're gonna break the bank very quickly on our firefighters just alone. That said, Chief Daley also acknowledges the fact that he knows he's a training ground, and that's why he's investing in the fact that there's a training facility out here and that we have this agreement with CMC Leadville that he acknowledges that if he can keep some people when they get to chief, to a battalion chief or an engine captain, that's great. But his lower end is always going to be a revolving door. He's creating the firefighters for everybody else out there. And so, I mean, there is just your understanding. I mean, that sometimes you just
Well, of course,
can't
there
compete.
is always going to be employee attrition. You can't guarantee 100% retention. But I think Chief Daley has done a very good job of creating a good work culture. And so I think he's got that going for him. He's got a good team. And there are people within the city are working super hard to create their own good teams. And I think that we're getting there. And I think it's a bunch of things. If our pay is relatively competitive, as I said, the work culture is good, people find intrinsic value in their work, maybe they're not going to leave for a couple bucks more. Maybe they will, but then at that point, we've done everything we could do to keep them. So I think you're right that it's not just the pay, it's a lot of other things, but I think the department heads are really working on that. And, kudos for a lot of the departments, folks who've held their departments together without any help. Like Caitlin was the only person at the animal shelter for a little while. Lori and Donna have been holding down administration single-handedly. Shannon in the police department was holding the police department. We had people really hold entire departments together on a shoestring.
kudos to them.
I would say to your point, I would like to see the police department develop a system similar to the fire department with a resident reserve program and bring people up into their ranks. And so what Dan does so well is he has always people in the wings. And so as he gets turnover, he has people moving into those positions, and it's a great system.
Mhm.
And it's an expensive system. But we may need to replicate that in other ways.
So I heard one thing that I think we could use some help with, and maybe a good goal under Max's idea, which I think is a great strategy, is having a sustainable city team with the bandwidth to respond to constituents. One of the things I think would be helpful is the outreach part of it. I think we need help with, and maybe we can brainstorm a goal with outreach, because I think I just saw the statistics that now 80% of our workforce is commuting out of the area. There was an article in the Herald last week, I think. And so I've talked to Councilmember Luna Leal about that a little bit. I think maybe one of our goals is a tactic to improve our outreach. And yes, yeah.
Oh, specifically about recruitment to work locally. I wholeheartedly agree. I would really love to lean on the EDC a bit on that, because I feel like that is a critical factor for economic development. We funded them pretty well this year. And I mean, I'm not an economic development expert, but I feel like if that's not part of their strategy and plan, they're probably missing a big component.
It is. I had a meeting with Nancy Bailey last week, and actually maybe, so she wants to come and do updates. Maybe that's something we'll ask her to do an update on. She's got an idea that I don't know if I'm allowed to say yet, but she's got an idea to increase the outreach, and I think it's a good idea.
Great.
So she is working on it, and I think it's a good idea, but I think we need more ways to reach that workforce, and I don't know what those ways are.
So here's a suggestion. You have to go to them. And I'm speaking specifically about the Hispanic community. If you ask them to come to you, culturally, that doesn't work for them. And it's taken me a long time to really get that. We've talked for decades about we need to incorporate the Hispanic community into our society. No, you don't. That's counterproductive. That's not what they want. But what they do want is to be treated fairly and to be communicated well with. And so I think you have to go to them. Is that Christian, please?
Yes, and more so to that point is we have to go to them with understanding of you might not have that same education that some of our other counterparts might, and we're willing to invest in you to get that education to run these departments. That's one of the biggest factors as to why a lot of our community members don't work in a lot of areas locally. I've heard countless amount of times that people who have applied and have reached out and gotten that extra step that they normally wouldn't, as the mayor stated, and I agree that's a fair assessment that we have to go to them, not us come to us. That, you know, even when they do come to us, we've rejected them because they don't have the proper training, because they don't have the proper education. So I think in the same way that we invest in our police department, we should invest in every single other place and give them that commitment that we're going to train you. We're going to make sure that you're an important part of this community as much as the next area of work.
What
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
what does that look like? Does that look like a partnership with CMC, like a public administration
So
degree, or what does that?
I
look
think that would probably incorporate some type of like GED program corporation, cooperation with CMC, as well as some other college classes, I assume, with CMC. Obviously, this is something that CMC would have to agree to, but I'm hopeful that they'd be.
Yeah, because they're expanding their construction trades
Mhm.
right now, so
So
they're doing that.
I-
But maybe we need like a public administration type.
Yeah, I have an idea, but let's let Dana comment first. Dana, please.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily have an answer to that, Tracy's question, but I know at Build a Generation, we've talked about this a lot and are trying to focus on growing our staff from within the local population and like Christian mentioned, training people up to their position rather than like trying to steal qualified people from other organizations, but build our own. And I think in a way that's kind of what Chief Bailey is doing. And I think the city could certainly embrace that sort of approach. I think the police department is starting to do that as well. Anyway, I just think that approach of growing your workforce from within and training people up rather than doing a wide, let's pick the most qualified person, who maybe is coming in from elsewhere, may be a way to sustain our workforce for a longer period of time.
I would agree with all that, but one of the things I just thought of when Christian was talking is, we kind of ignore Cloud City High School. And that might be a place where people are looking for an opportunity because they've been kind of shunted away from the high school and for a variety of reasons. Some of them are just little older students who are going after their GED. So there's a lot of reasons they're there, but maybe an outreach to Cloud City would just be a start. Maybe just me going and offering to talk to the kids about opportunities in the city or something like that. I'm just thinking out loud right now.
Do we have a tuition reimbursement program?
We do not.
Maybe we should start one.
Or an internship.
And one of the things that made me think about all these ideas, and one of the things that I was surprised when I came to the city is there's no human resources director. So there's no one spearheading recruitment, retention. We've asked our finance director to be the finance director, sometimes planning director with Lori, sometimes a deputy city clerk, and the human resources director. And I think that we can't ask Donna to do these outreach. And so what I think maybe it's something to think about for 2022 or 2023 is having a dedicated human resources person who can develop the partnerships with CMC, work with the Economic Development Corporation on their outreach, look at creating a tuition reimbursement program, look at, mayor creates a partnership with Cloud City High School, managing that partnership and getting, because what you have to, that's, you get a high school student to come in. You've got to have, if they're under 18, you need a release agreement from their parents. You need to manage them. You need bandwidth, as Max, council member for Gen-Z was saying, you would need that bandwidth, the city bandwidth to do that. And I think if we're going to, I think it would be wise to think about investing in a human resource for a lot of other reasons, but if not, because I think one of the things I just heard was retention was your, like summarizing your concept as retention. And now we're talking about recruitment. Retention and recruitment are generally human. They're not finance director duties. I'll just say they probably fall under me and a human resources director.
It would be recruitment, development, and retention, because
Absolutely. Development in that there are a lot of things that Donna has suggested to me that we should be doing and need to be doing, but we just don't have the ability. And there's a lot of development these days that you can do online, but someone just has to have the bandwidth to find it, locate it, pay it, just pay. Even just processing a payment is work for. So just throwing that out there as an idea.
so if there was a human resources director, we just had a resolution to have a planning director.
Correct.
I mean, that's something we have to look,
Planner, human resources.
or no,
No.
maybe a second position,
Correct.
you know?
Yeah.
But like, I mean, we just conjured up in thin air a planning director.
Yep.
At some, at some folks' suggestions, or recommendations. What I'm hearing is recommended that we get a human resource director coming in here.
It was a surprise to me, honestly, that this city did not have key positions, a planning director, a human resources director, and a communications person. I'm not convinced you need a full-time communications person. I was convinced you needed a full-time, city needs a full-time planning director. That was very clear. Human resources, I'll tell you, that is if not now, it's just a matter of when that position would need to be full-time.
And I mean, just from what I'm feeling, it's that we all feel pretty passionate about retention, recruitment, so on and so forth. So I think it would be smart, Lori, and if you can, to develop that sooner rather than later. Lori, is that something that you feel like you could do?
Yes. Yes. So what I did for the planning director position was I reached out to the Colorado Municipal League has an email listserv for all city managers and administrators. And so I reached out and said, look, if you're a community of 2,500 to 5,000 people, can you send me your planning director's job description? And I got those. And then I worked with Gabby Boulder to tailor ours to us because we're unique. We have a historic preservation. We have some unique needs. And so that's certainly something that we can do. And our HR consultant is also available to help us. I looked at the same thing on the pay range for the planning director position. We're, as Councilmember for Gen-Z pointed out, we're unique. We're not rural, but we're not resort. And so we need to pay for, create a pay band that's right for us. We're not rural, we're not resort, we're kind of somewhere in between. So I can certainly do that. And so I would do basically the same process to make sure the position description, and that was the other thing I thought about with the outreach, is that there may be outdated position descriptions that require education or experience that may not be necessary for the position. And so what Councilor Luna Leal was saying is we might be excluding people because they don't have a certain degree, and we may not really truly need that degree. There are some licenses that are required. That's just, you have to have a CDL for some of our equipment.
I have to break in and tell you my favorite story. It's about Donna. We hired a few years ago a finance director. Roy McGinnis left, and so we hired a finance director who was a CPA and had been the FCO of a hospital group, financial control officer. And then we hired Donna to be his assistant. Well, Donna has a high school education. She was at least 5 times better than this person. And that person ended up leaving, and Donna has stepped in. So to your point, it's not about degrees. It's about the need and the want to learn and to be good at what you do. and she's been fabulous, but I've always, that's been a real lesson for me.
So maybe that's one of the things we include in the position description for the human resources director is to really look at all of our position descriptions. And if we're requiring education or experience that we don't really need, maybe we're excluding people from applying and or they apply and we rule them out because they don't have some criteria that isn't necessary. Okay. So yes, I can do that. What about now we're loading up the May 17th meeting. But all right, so my goal will be to have that to you all on the May 17th meeting. If that is not a physical possibility, for sure, the first meeting in June.
That sounds good to me.
Thank you.
Yep, great.
I'd like to get us back on track, and I want to mention some things that at the end of the year, I'd like to see us having accomplished, and some of them are small. One of them is the park we're building across the street, and that's the bathrooms. And they just went through a COA with the Historic Preservation Commission, but we're also putting together a meeting Thursday, I hope, with some of the utilities and the general contractor, who will be Hope Colitz, and to put a plan together to get this thing going. So I won't get into it, but at the end of the year, I'd like to look back on that and say, yeah, we built that. That's cool, and we needed it. I don't know what you guys may or may not know about the Crossroads Trail. I'd like to look back at the end of the year and say, yeah, we got that done. Now, we being Mike Conlon and Volunteers for Outdoor Colorado and the city and county all kind of working together to put that trail in place. That's a trail that's going to go under the Arkansas River Bridge, about 7 miles south of town.
It's not even in the city.
It's not in the city.
Oh, I know that, but it's part of this complete trail system from Copper Mountain to Salida that involves the city, because I'm on the Stage and Rail Trail Committee. And so we've been very involved in this, and the county's doing it as well. So I'd like to see that trail get completed, because it is the single most important part of putting that trail together, because it moves the trail from the west side to the east side. And there was no other way to get over there other than to build another bridge over Highway 24 somewhere around Granite.
It's going to be tough over up on the side of Fremont Pass with the Forest Service too. That's the other pinch point.
Mike said that there's some delays in terms of the planning and implementation of the Fremont Pass Trail. You think it's going to be not doable?
Well, there was momentum when I was here, and then ever since there has been not even a discussion about it.
We'll get back to it.
Yeah. Well, it's out of my purview now.
Sorry, but yeah, Mike alluded to that. They finished the trail up to the bridge there on Highway 91, and now that's like a third of the trail. So then now they get to the top of Fremont Pass and then into Leadville. They have plans in place. And then the other trail going from Leadville to Salida, the Stage and Rail Trail, is another big project. There's a committee in place, and they've made a lot of progress. So
What about a spur into the city? Is it gonna follow the rail line going around?
it's going to come across the way they have it planned now. We want it to come up County Road 4. We want that to be, because there's 2/3 of that, or maybe 4/5 of it is already trail. It's just that last mile to the railroad tracks that they have to get. So that's a consideration too. And then it would come around County Road 5 and may make the connections they need to make. So it wouldn't all necessarily all be on trail, but it would be connectivity all the way.
What else do you have, Mayor?
Oh, yeah. We've been working on a transportation grant, and we know we can't implement, I don't think we can implement a transportation system this year, but the study is being completed now. And once that's done, then we can apply for a 5310 and 5311 CDOT grants, and they want us to apply for them. And you guys, I think you heard the presentation they did at State of the Community. We're heading a long ways in that direction. It's going to take a couple of years to get it in place and have the equipment and stuff.
And actually, that is one of the things that's going to be on the agenda for the 17th is Jason from Fair and Piers is going to come do a presentation as to
Right.
where that plan, where they are in the plan, right, in the progress right now. They just did a presentation or like a week before they're going to do their presentation to the Board of County Commissioners. So they're, Jason, he's going to do it virtually from, I think he's in Denver, but at any rate, he's quite good. And so he'll give you an update as to where that planning is right now.
That's exciting. You know, we're making progress there.
Having the first transit system in Leadville would be off the hook amazing. It'd be amazing. Be a big deal.
I'd like to look back and say we paved some streets. Right now, we've got Second Street targeted because we took all the asphalt out of Second Street between Toledo and Alder out last year. And then all the utilities did their work except for XL, and they've got their schedule as the first thing they're gonna do this year. And then we can pave Second Street. Also,
Wait, so the goal is paved Second Street?
that'll be the first thing we do, yeah.
Let's do more than one street.
I want to do Sixth Street. This is, I'm talking to the street department and I'm gonna put this out for bid. I want to do Sixth Street all the way from Harrison to past James at the top of the hill. That's about four blocks. But it's bad and it's getting worse all the time. Sixth Street's getting bad. Now, it's not like, you know, there aren't bad streets all over town. There are, but that one's really getting terrible. It's a highly traveled street. And then we may end up having to do Pine because, not that I wanted to prioritize Pine, but Leadville Sanitation is going to replace their main line all the way down Pine this summer. So we may do a cooperative effort with them and get Pine. But Pine's tricky because it has a bunch of concrete swales that'll have to be done as well. So the last thing I have is parking lots. I want to look back and say we were successful. We purchased that small lot. I now have a contract in hand. I've given it to Christiana for the last time and said, we got red line. She gave me a contract. We sent it to community banks. It's been a while, but they sent it back. It's red line. I looked at their changes, had no problem with the changes. Basically, they want $7,500 a year. And we would have complete usage 6 months out of the year and partial usage the other 6 months because they use it for snow storage. And so I feel like we're on the cusp of getting that parking lot. So we're also gonna order parking lot signs, I hope Thursday morning.
Okay.
And the last thing is I've reached out to the Elks. We talked about half the Elks parking lot never gets used. So I've reached out to the Elks, talked to JR once. I just sent him a message the other day. Haven't heard back from him, but I'll persist in putting a similar contract in place for use of the Elks parking lot. Okay,
Can I tag on to yours?
please do.
Can we please get parking lot signs for the Tabor Opera House parking lot?
That's part of our
That
signage.
is, it's
Yeah.
gonna be a big glowy P that says P this
Well,
way.
we want to, I was suggesting that, you know, the wayfinding signs that are in are so lovely and fit our community so well that, is there any chance of getting the same wayfinding for the parking?
The same design, color
Mhm.
scheme.
Or
I don't know
So
if
much
that's going to
bigger.
be
Yes.
For auto
obvious enough
travelers.
Got
to
it.
people looking for parking in the
Yeah.
summer. I don't disagree with you. Maybe some really good bold parking signs that have a historic look to them.
Yeah.
With that,
I like
what do
it.
you think?
Yeah.
Having said that, I don't know where we're gonna get them.
A historic RV parking sign.
Historic RV parking, which means only RVs made before 1964 can park in here.
Mayor,
Yes, please.
before you order the signs,
Yes.
can you please present the parking sign plan to somebody that actually has done this before?
Who would that be?
Well, I can do it.
Okay.
I mean, this is something that we do with trail signs, wayfinding
Okay.
all over the national forest, but at the same time, I mean, I think we need to, I'm not saying I'm the best person to do this, but perhaps somebody with the county to help us with that is truly into, like, that does sign plan, right? That is truly has the expertise behind it. I can do it because I've done it with both on roads and trails within the national forest. But I think that we want to make sure that we're capturing where we need signs before we just, and I know that I bet you're at least 85%, but I think that last 15% of the sign plan is going to be the most important part.
What are you doing Thursday morning at 8 o'clock?
I can look at my calendar right now.
Would you do that?
Yeah, I can. And also with the Tabor, is there any way that we can just silently change the parking so it's overnight there?
I would like to go to the police department and say, and we don't enforce it now, don't get me wrong. We don't enforce overnight parking in the Tabor lot, and we haven't for quite some years. But I just want to make sure that we have that clear understanding, because it never gets overused, it doesn't get abused. And but I'm a little bit afraid of advertising it as overnight parking.
Agreed. I'm just thinking that to Councilmember Luna Lales discussion point last week about how he's seeing more and more people that are homeless right now. I'm certain that a lot of those folks are living in their vehicles. And I think that potentially being able to provide a couple strategic messages to perhaps Full Circle or the likes to say that there's some safe parking that is overnight.
I like that idea. I've been a little reluctant to go forward with that because it scares me a little bit in terms of the unintended consequences. But here's what I do want to do, and I had asked Lori to order. I want a porta potty there
Yep, agreed.
at that parking lot. And have you ordered it already? Thank you.
So it
So that's-
seems like we're
that's-
right
that's
in
one step.
alignment. Yeah. Just letting you know, just on Ridge Street in Breckenridge, there's overnight parking that people sleep in on a couple of those.
And is
Brian
it
Ford lots.
advertised as available overnight parking, or they just allow it?
Well, it is overnight. It says overnight parking, whatever there, but
Okay.
but it is specific for
As a safe place.
a safe place for the
In
working.
Breckenridge?
And then churches do too.
Yes.
Well, then maybe I'm being a little reluctant to step over the edge of that cliff. Maybe we just go for it, and if it turns out to be a problem, then we deal with
I
it.
think if you're gonna do that, you gotta provide a porta potty.
Agreed.
We've already ordered one.
So maybe the idea is we can put it on the agenda and just have it be a goal to look at it. I don't know that we have to make a decision now, but I think that the overnight parking in our parking lots is a question mark. It's an issue we need to address. And maybe we do a little bit of research on other communities and the positives and negatives that have occurred, and maybe some lessons learned if we are going to do it, the things we should think about that they didn't think about and found out after they tried it. So maybe putting
Yeah.
that on the agenda for a decision.
I did have a conversation with some people at the in the game conference, and they said, you just have to be careful because you don't want it to become a homeless encampment. Those are different things. And once you have a homeless encampment, now you have a completely different social issue in terms of mental illness, drug abuse, and a lot of things that require a lot of social services to interface with a homeless encampment. So that was the warning I was given by people.
I would also worry about it becoming just a free place to camp for visitors, which isn't really meeting our
No.
goal.
So
I don't
there may
know.
be some things we need to navigate if we want to do it.
I don't know if that's a bad thing, because it happens in the summer. People, I see campers there all the time, and
People camp on all the streets on the west side. They are,
do they?
oh yeah, there are people that camp right in their camper vans on the side of every single street in the
Yeah.
summertime.
How interesting.
I guess I don't see a lot of harm in it unless those folks are taking it up and we're not actually helping, folks who are in need of a safe
That's
space.
a good point.
Maybe that goes in line with the strategy of not necessarily removing the fact that it's overnight parking, but just not enforcing it. But if we need to enforce it for any reason.
Good point.
That's a very good point. But we could also get the word out to some, I've talked to business people who said they have employees who live in their cars. And that's tragic.
We could have them register. But police could, do a scan of license plates and say, if you're gonna sleep here, you have to register with the city.
Okay. Well, that's my list. Sorry, we
Love it.
belabored a little bit. I'd like to hear from everybody else.
But can I just wanted to clarify a couple things to make sure I've got so I put it under the sort of heading of infrastructure, so parklet completed. Crossroads Trail, under the Arkansas River Bridge section completed.
We're not doing much. I mean, we're gonna carry some materials for them preparatory for the Volunteers for Outdoor Colorado Work Week. And we have ordered some bollards that they needed, and we'll order 2 12-inch stop signs. That'll be our part. We're not deeply involved in it, just to help. And it's Mike Conlon's good at kind of putting together groups and people to get things done. So
And then we talked about the transit plan. The goal
out
is
of
to
our hands, but yeah.
To have
I
that
hope by
plan
the end of the
completed.
year, we have grants in for
Grant
actual,
application.
transit.
And I think most of that will fall outside of the city's scope. Kayla is the one leading that effort, am I correct?
Oh, that is true.
The grant applications.
Yes.
Yes,
Kayla has a lot of experience in those grant applications.
but whatever we can do to assist those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the transit system will be a lot within the city limits. Yeah, okay. And then, so that, under infrastructure, we have parklet completed, the Crossroads Transit, street paving, I have 6th Street, Harrison to James, and potentially Pine. And then parking lot sharing agreements with community banks and the Elks, and some wayfinding signs. And then a discussion on the Tabor Opera House parking lot, overnight parking.
Okay,
I have one more. if I may.
please.
We discussed this a bit last meeting, but I think really diving into short-term rentals. I know we already have a plan for it, but if not this year, hopefully next year, really consider strongly what type of short-term rentals, or, what housing capacity are they taking and how much can we limit that? And really strongly considering that and enforcing it and starting to move into that housing opportunity, whether it be rental or owned housing.
Great. Thank you. I love that. Can we go to,
One more.
I'm sorry, Tracy, please.
This would be a goal for the new housing director, or planning director. And I've mentioned this before, I would like to see a list of homes in Leadville that look like they are abandoned, or there's lots with, for example, on East 7th, we have a barn that's about to fall over. Obviously, no one's lived there for years, and it's literally about to fall over. And I think the first approach would be to go on the assessor database, find out who owns those homes, and offer to buy them from whoever has probably inherited them and never did anything with them. And
Got 2 in my house.
or
Buy
in
my
the
house.
case if we can't buy it, like the barn that's about to fall over, we should condemn it and take it over. I mean, that is one housing option we have, where we can go out and find these areas or lots that literally no one's lived there for 30 years, or it's got a piece of junky barn on it that's about to fall over, and we need to identify those. And if we can turn them into housing, let's do it.
So I
Tracy,
think.
I would
oh,
tell
yeah.
you that we put a list together. I don't know if it's still relevant. We put a list together about 4 years ago. We had Joe Squires as a CSO go around and literally put a list of those together. So that might be a starting point. The police department may still have that, but you're absolutely correct. It's a bandwidth problem. We put the list together. Now what do you do?
Yeah, I
Now,
know,
you
that's
know-
what I'm saying, when the planning director.
The
Yeah.
planning director. Yeah, yeah, okay.
I've got something.
Can we call on Dana first? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
for sure.
Dana, what do you have for us?
Sorry, it's hard to get to my unmute button. Well, if I'm remembering correctly, my big things in speaking with Lori previously were parking. I know we talked about the parking lots, but in terms of having a parking plan, since the signs are coming down, I would like to get that tidied up relatively quickly and certainly by the end of 2022. And paving is always on my list, but it sounds like from what you described, Mayor, that is at least there will be some big projects this summer that I'm happy to hear about. You know, and I know we're not supposed to talk about housing, but housing.
Well, and as I say, Councilmember Green, I have on my desk the parking plan that we paid, was it Walker Consultants did? So it is on my list of things that I want to do, is to take a look at that and see if there are things that we can implement, or if things that we need to follow through with that, because we paid for that analysis, so we should use it.
We did talk to Walker Consultants about an additional possible study to put together a neighborhood parking plan, and we decided to hold off on that to see how, you know, what current changes we've made, how is this going to work out? Do we really need a neighborhood parking plan? And if we do, then let's implement it, you know, thoughtfully in terms of where it's really needed. I think that's where we landed.
Along those lines, I would like to see more of a kind of a structured evaluation for, let's see how this turns out, having taken the signs down. And I'm not sure if a survey is the best way to do that, or, you know, counting open parking spots at certain times, especially busy weekends. I'm not really sure how best to do that, but I'm a little uncomfortable leaving it just sort of open-ended of, let's just see how this works out.
Okay. Yeah, well, I would agree with you on one point, and that is, you know, I've been getting some questions. We sent out a letter last week. People have already gotten it because I've gotten some emails and calls. And basically the letter just reminded everybody we're picking up the signs. And it kind of explained why, but also that, and I put in there for people who feel like they're disabled or mobility impaired, here was the URL that you can apply to at the state to get your state permit. And if you bring it to us, then we will put a sign at your house, you know, indicating this is a mobility impaired parking space.
And this is free of charge, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think communicating that, one person who came, who wasn't mobility impaired, to that 809 Spruce Street meeting, mentioned a while ago, probably under this no parking previous plan, wanted to have that for themselves, but because of the cost, I figured it's not worth it. So I think having a even broader than just the people who already had it, but maybe it's, I don't know, some sort of.
But the mayor, didn't you put it in your newsletter?
I did. That newsletter, we have sent it off to the Every Door Direct mailing program that we use. And it usually takes them about 10 days to get those out. So now I've seen it take longer than that. So it's
So
frustrating.
that is going.
So it'll go to everybody.
The first letter went directly to people who had parking permits.
Oh, I see. I see.
Okay. And now the newsletter is going out to everybody in the city.
Okay, cool. That addresses mine.
And
Good
I think
job.
we got a legal opinion from our city attorney last time that while the parking permit program was, you know, specific to that household, the disabled parking is for anyone who has the disabled placard or a, like, so you can't reserve it for yourself. The odds of someone coming to town potentially and being disabled and wanting to park in front of your house could happen, maybe won't happen a lot, but it is not a reserved parking spot for that particular person. But it would be I think, really helpful for
Absolutely.
whoever lives at that house.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the newsletter's going out. Hopefully they see it.
Hopefully they read it.
Yeah, hopefully they read it. Fingers crossed.
All right, thank you. Tim?
4 more days before we get to remove those signs, isn't it the 30th of April we did
It'll
it?
probably be, we'll start May the 2nd, 30th April.
Yeah, we talked to the streets department. The letter said we would take them out after the 30th of
Yeah.
April.
Okay.
So we've, at the last department heads meeting, we were trying to coordinate one last way to inform folks, one last, by the way, we're really, really, really going to take these out. And then the streets department knows that May 2nd, they can start taking them out, and that they are specifically not supposed to allow the residents to keep the sign. The sign is coming back to the city.
And they are removing the T-posts
Correct.
too, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And will they be also removing or advising any improvised signage?
Yeah, so we've talked to our police commissioner about that, and I've talked to our city attorney about that, and we probably will get I need to confirm with our police commissioner who's been into Post Academy what we want to do with the CSOs and potentially advising folks that putting a sign, whether it's verbally or we put a note on it saying these homemade no parking signs are not enforceable. They're not allowed.
Okay.
I would say to the point she just made, our police commissioner is now post certified and he can be sworn in as our police chief. So
Passed, nice.
Yep.
Where's everybody clapping?
Tim has been patiently, Councilmember Hill has been patiently waiting.
he has, you've been.
I'm a
you've been
fly
saint.
fishing guide, so I am an ocean of patience.
Okay, so the mayor told a story. I have to tell my favorite fly fishing story. So my dad was an avid fly fisherman when I was growing up, and he took me fly fishing, and we actually went to the annual Federation of Fly Fishermen. I don't think it's a group anymore, it's merged, but he took me to this conference up in Jackson, Wyoming. And I was like 12 or 13, and we went out on the river and we stood in the river, and you're casting. And I looked down, and in my wake are like 3 trout. And I was like, can't I just take my net and scoop them up? Like, isn't that? And my dad was like, no, that's not the point. And so he was the lead speaker at the entire convention. I'm reminding you, I was 12 years old. He told that story. And everyone thought it was hilarious, except for me, because I was 12 years old. But I was like, what's the point? The fish are right there. Can't you just scoop them up? But apparently that's not the point.
Yeah, not the point. Actually, I've had a guy do that before, but anyway, mine kind of ties in with the parking thing. But it also has to do with improving relations between locals and our visitors. I think there's a lot of things that can be done to improve that. I think there's a big disconnect between locals and tourists in this town. And there's a lot of things we can do to improve upon that. I think we can educate our tourists. I also think we can educate our locals on, the benefits of having tourists around and how a tourist can improve their quality of life. But more to the point, and more of something that I think we as a city can do to relieve some of the stresses that tourists bring, and especially the race series, is that we can have folks for these events, the big events, the 100-milers. I know they already do it for the 50-milers, but for the 100-milers, we need to have these folks park remotely. How we go about getting them to do that is a different story. I've got some ideas, but there's, I think the parking assessment identified approximately 1,100 parking spaces between rodeo grounds, community fields, the middle school and the high school.
And that would be an easy shuttle pattern. Yeah.
And it would be an easy shuttle. I think these folks, it's not far to walk. And also, is there some type of agreement that can be made between the school district and Lifetime Fitness to be able to use the facilities at the schools, right? There's locker rooms for changing, bathrooms. There's cafeterias where maybe a local coffee shop could set up and serve coffee and pastries. So there's not a line that's 3 blocks long trying to get a cup of coffee in town. So I think there's some things that can be done to make that an attractive option for those participants, so they're not peeing in everybody's yard, changing their clothes wherever they want, making themselves a nuisance in the town, and not creating absolute havoc before the starts of these races. I mean, it is absolute chaos.
And if I may, we have our first meeting with everyone with Lifetime tomorrow at 11:30 at CMC. And we had a brief meeting last week and no one from Lifetime was present, but we discussed some of that. And our recommendation to them and the planning thing tomorrow is going to be the shuttle service that we've been asking them to do, meaning people need to park, as you suggest, offsite, whether it be at the community fields or all the others, and they have a shuttle service that brings them in.
And I
So,
also think above and beyond the facilities that schools have, additional porta potties or portable changing rooms, things of that nature. It just makes sense. It makes sense for them. And it makes sense for us as a city.
I think it makes sense for them too, especially because, I feel like they want to be invested in the long term, and sometimes they just aren't going to take those extra steps unless we ask them to. But I do think they're well down the road of the shuttle system. I've talked to Tamara. She really wants to implement that this year. So, but the rest of those other ideas are really good in terms of use the high school, use the middle school. They're not being used that time of year. And you talked about locker rooms and maybe a little coffee bar, pastry shop, but even a local, restaurant could put in place. I think those are great ideas.
Well, I think if you have a vendor up there serving food and coffee, that they'd be more apt to comply with, because
Getting a coffee at City on the
everybody
Hill.
hates trying to get a coffee on those mornings. Participants included,
Yeah.
entourage and everybody.
So what about a sidewalk on that note, on that same road that, I forgot exactly what road it is. That street that leads directly to the high school and middle school. Given that given that there isn't one currently, to serve the purpose of making it more ideal to walk for, and also just for really kids to go to school. I know that was a concern when I was in school, is I'd love to walk to school, for the couple weeks that I can before it starts snowing, but there's no real sidewalk to walk there or walk back really. I think that's 2 birds with 1 stone right there. We do, and this could be 2023 or 4, but I do think that would be a smart investment in that space and making it as attractive as possible, and also making it useful for people who walk around.
I've tried to think of how we get a sidewalk between Liner and James, and I think it's an engineering challenge.
There's actually a historic wooden sidewalk on
On the
north
hillside,
side of the road.
that's really interesting because I was thinking if you did a sidewalk, it has to be on that side.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know where's the right of way, because a lot of people have
Yeah,
their
it's
stairs.
kind of in pieces, but
Yeah.
there are the existing historic wooden.
That's very
sidewalks
interesting.
that come under the preservation.
Anyhow, when we do meet with Lifetime, because their permits are coming up, is that
Yes.
correct? If we could have a united front when they approach us and really push for them to start parking remotely.
I'm sorry, we didn't know about that meeting. Who knew about that meeting?
We had a meeting last week, and because no one from Lifetime Fitness, we just kind of on the spot right then decided to have another meeting. They did it after, because they had booked the CMC room after the emergency management meeting.
Well, the emergency management meeting is 11:30. You said yours was gonna be
No,
11:30.
he said the emergency management meeting was ending at 11:30.
Oh.
And then that's when our meeting. is
Got it. So you'll be
starting.
in 317 then at
Yes,
11:30? Got it.
yes,
Okay.
at 11:30. Also, Commissioner Hill, sorry, Councilmember Hill, I just had an APC meeting. That your first TUP will be on the May 5th. Your next council meeting, you'll have your first TUP because I only have received one. I did get an email from Tamara this morning and she has the rest of them coming tomorrow probably, but it's not enough time for me to get them on the agenda, so you will just have one next week. So.
Yeah, I just
Like you
think
said,
it's,
United
it's
Front.
one thing that we can impress upon them that
Yes,
They
and you can
need-
make that a condition of the approval.
they need to reduce the stress that their events cause on the locals. And that's one way to do it.
And I will bring these two things that you mentioned up at the meeting tomorrow. The shuttle and partnering with the school, because I think it's great.
And the additional porta potties.
Yes.
And
Pardon me, did you say May 5th is their TUP?
I'm sorry?
Did you say May 5th?
I think it's the third.
May
Third.
For the
3rd?
next meeting, or our next council meeting?
Yes,
Yeah.
May third.
third,
The TUP will be on.
That's our
May 3rd
next council meeting?
agenda.
Mayor,
Yes, please.
in regard to Lifetime Fitness, what about their sidewalk?
Thank you. I live on Second Street.
What
I
about
mean, that
what?
sidewalk is not existing around their corner building there on Second Street. It is absolutely, it's down to dust.
I think we should bring that up. I mean, that's not part of the TUP. They told me, I mean, literally about 4 years ago that they were gonna put that sidewalk in and they've never done it.
And Councilmember Lochner also,
Mhm.
just a year ago, was talking to them as well about it, and they told her they would put it in, and they, you know.
We have viable businesses down that street and a pedestrian crosswalk across the Harrison beyond that point that goes to Wild Bill's. Absolutely ludicrous that their sidewalk is worse than what it was on Poplar between 9th and 10th and 11th. It's that bad over there. It is a terrible sidewalk and they should fix that. They should be responsible for that sidewalk.
And on the flip side, on that land they bought at Poplar, they put in a magnificent sidewalk. That's the best sidewalk in Leadville.
Yeah,
There
I
is no
don't get it.
sidewalk left for-
Yeah,
There is
Yeah.
no.
but you make a very good point. There's no reason they shouldn't do that.
So I would share that priority with Councilmember Hill as far as lightening the stress of the bigger events, mostly referring to the race series events. And were you implying like a start and a finish at a school district building where they could be changing? Or were you envisioning like the start and finish would be the same and people would change elsewhere? Or how did that fit into your thoughts?
The start and finish would stay the same, but they wouldn't be able to park in town for the start and finish. They would park remotely
Yeah.
and then shuttle in.
Yeah, I've been wondering if they should start and finish outside of the main downtown, and I know there's, especially with the race series, there's a lot of enthusiasm around that. And so I do think that I would feel like if they can't lighten this load, that would be kind of the next step in my mind, is move the starts and finishes. You know, even if it's just down to like lighter field and Pitts Elementary or something, but I'd like to see them figure out ways to lighten the load and still be able to have their kind of more celebrated finish right on Harrison.
Okay, thank you. Tim, what else?
But I think everything else has been covered. for
Okay.
me. But
Cisco?
that was
you-
one,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
one point I wanted to emphasize. is
Okay.
really
I
try to-
really do think
try
it's
to make that
important,
happen.
and it's an important consideration when they come for the TUP. Cisco, you have a list.
Yeah, everything on my list has been talked about except one. So I had on my list, right sizing the city organization, which we've talked about, progress on housing access. In particular on housing access, I'd like us to continue ticking away at some of those items that will make us more competitive in that big DOLA grant. I feel like that's a kind of good guiding list. Paving's been talked about, parking's been talked about. So the only thing I'll bring up that's new is the big strategy, which will probably take many years, I think, is communications. And Lori brought it up as far as, you know, considering, do we need a director of communications or what? But I would like to see, even if it's small improvements in our communications. When I say that, I'm imagining website, I'm imagining at least 1 or 2 social media platforms. And then I love the correspondence as well. I don't think that should go away, you know, the personal outreach and the letters and stuff. I would love to see some of that kind of front end and back end. Like, what I mean by front end is more a more bite-sized invitation for people to participate. So, you know, we email out these agendas and stuff, and I think a lot of folks probably aren't on that email list or don't even read it, but a Facebook post that says, tonight we're talking about X, Y, and Z, 6 p.m. like every Tuesday or whatever, you know? So like that front end engagement, and then back end lifting up the good stuff we're doing and kind of talking about what we are achieving, what we're working on. You know, I'm sure a communication director could have a more nuanced approach, but that to me feels like kind of low-hanging fruit, although I know folks are spread thin. But I would hope that by the end of this year, we could be doing more of that.
Mayor, may I add one more thing to that? One, I guess two. One, definitely emphasis on the Facebook. For one reason or another, our community, large Facebook users. The second one was, we've talked about this before, but perhaps on the note of us going to them, having our city council meetings in different areas, depending on the tone and discussions that we're having. I think if we're going to have a discussion about a parking lot and that's going to be the main focus, maybe we should have it at that parking lot if it's in the summer. So I think that should go along with being proactive in this, where we have these meetings.
I love it.
I know this is going to sound absurd, but I do love that idea. And we did have a city council meeting at the senior center a few years ago. And I thought that was really a good thing to do. I mean, this is going to sound like the worst idea ever, but we could have a council meeting at the Silver Dollar. Because there's a whole culture in Leadville that we don't reach. It's there, but we don't speak to them. And I'm just throwing that as an example. We could do a city council meeting at Freight. We could do a city council meeting at the Tabor Opera House. There are lots of ways to do this. The hybrid might be cause some problems, but these are just thoughts. But I totally agree with that. Anyway.
Hybrid, we can figure out. I'm pretty confident in the OWL solution.
And I think I appreciate Councilmember Tharp bringing this up, because I think communications are sometimes not valued as much as they should be. So I remember the council meeting that I was visiting. I think I hadn't started yet, and there were some lodging owners who were voicing concern that they hadn't been communicated with. And we realized that we had a program and were successful in passing it, but hadn't done the next step, which is make sure everyone knows. And you can do one thing and that may reach some part of the community, but not everyone. And we had the Community Justice Center event at Freight a couple of weeks ago. There was a woman there who said, well, I don't do computers. And I was like, oh, this is great. I said, how do you get your information? Because this is the other slice of the population, right? Because we think social media and everything. She reads the newspaper. So the communication is the newspaper, it's Facebook. And I completely agree about the agendas being a little bit stiff. They're necessary. That's public notice, but putting something on Facebook that says, tonight we're going to set goals, come.
I love that idea.
And I think the communications, I think we're very good at establishing programs, but maybe not so good at communicating them. So The lodging tax is, all I have to say, was a huge stress on staff. A huge stress,
Mm.
because we instituted a program without any planning on how and who was going to manage it.
Wow, yeah.
And what happened was we didn't push out communication as well as we could have. And people were frustrated and upset and called the city and talked to Lori and or Donna and were upset. So we could have done a lot better on that. And we actually caused a lot of stress on our staff from taking. And so what I wanted to do was throw up some quick frequently asked questions on our website. But you know what? We don't have anybody to do that. We are losing the person who was doing that for us, which was Sarah Day. She's going to do as much as she can before she goes. But so that's where our bandwidth is. That's why I was a little panicked about losing Sarah Day, is that she was an amazing gap filler on short-term rentals, planning, Laura board, communications, jack of all trades. We are losing a huge asset in her that we don't have the ability to replace right now. We're doing pieces of it. We're getting there, I think, some of these things, but I do think it wouldn't be a bad idea to think about communications person, part-time, I don't know, full-time, but thinking about that, because I do think we created a lot of work for ourselves by not getting out front on some communication.
Yeah, I have two kind of tactics, one of which is sort of similar to that. I wonder about a contractor or an RFP.
Yep.
For something like that. I don't, the other tactic idea I have is I wonder if we could systematize thinking about every communications impact of our decisions. And one way we could do it in this format for these agenda items, I wonder if we could make one of the sections communications considerations.
Right. How we would roll it out.
And yeah, I think like I think rolling it out is more than just communications, but, and maybe that's good here too, for sure. But my thought was just communications, like some things won't have a lot of communication consideration and some things will, but it would at least trigger us to think about it. It'd trigger staff to think about it in presenting this. It triggered council to think about it when we consider it.
Right. And I think we're doing a good, better job with the removal of the private parking signs. I think that has been a good effort in notifying the people who had them, notifying all the residents, getting out in front of it, because I know as soon as those posts start coming out, people are gonna have concerns, but we've gotten out in front of that more. So I do think that's a good idea. We can easily put that on the template for the communication to council. And then I think, maybe we get through this little period and maybe think about later towards the end of the year how we want to do communications. I think a contract person is a great idea, because I'm not sure it's a full-time position. It may become that, or it may become a hybrid where we have that half-time communications, half-time something else. But yeah. Okay.
We've heard a lot of good ideas. Anybody has anything come to mind as we've talked that has keyed a new thought?
I've only given one idea.
Oh, really?
I have about 9.
Do you really?
No, I have one, but it comes up with a question first.
Okay.
Who owns the Evergreen Cemetery?
That's a great question. It has a number of owners, and I have it was a lawsuit, and I have the title work from the judge that split it up between, her name is oh man, now I'm gonna forget her name, Deborah something. She lives in Montrose. She's very reclusive. I won't get into that. And then the judge also divided up according to, like, there's an elk section and there's a woodman section, and so he paired all those out. And so the Evergreen Cemetery is a mosaic of ownership. Now, we had to get an easement from Deborah, and we never contacted her directly, but her attorney worked with us and we got an easement for the Irish Memorial and the Irish area back there, so that they could put the memorial in and maintain that Irish area. So I'm sorry, what, to get to, what's the point of your question?
Well, it comes to, I know that we're in the city and folks here probably don't believe that we are within the wildland urban interface right here where we sit right now, but we are. And I know that there's a lot of work that the county's been doing with some of the crews and some of the bigger landowners such as CMC and Newmont Mines or whatever they are. And there's a few places that I believe are places that there's enough contiguous acreage of trees that a fire could actually stand up and take steam at our town and or city, pardon me. And if it was to ever enter our city, it would be under a wind event and it would not go from tree to tree. It would go from house to house, and the trees around our homes would probably survive and the homes would burn. That would probably be what my assessment would be. And we are pretty densely packed too. So till the wind died down, there'd be a large swath of homes lost. And a couple places that I'm not going to consider myself an expert, because X is former and PERT is smaller than the smallest, most infinitesimal blob of whale shit found in the deepest part of the deepest ocean. So you don't amount to much as an expert. But I do believe that there's enough trees that are at the age that if there was a fire to start outside the Evergreen Cemetery, it's a contiguous acreage that could come smacking straight into our community. And that's predominant winds, northwest winds. Also CMC too, that's another area that has contiguous acres over near there. But I just feel the point I'm trying to make, and I think it's a relatively easy ask to see in fiscal year 22 is that to support the county in any WUI, in anything that they're trying to do, if that's financial, I don't know what it is, because we can't, it costs so much money to do these types of treatments.
They haven't come to us for financial help, but they have said they are going to.
Yep.
And so we don't know what that means yet. Certainly the fire department, city department is very involved in this. So sorry to interrupt, but yeah.
It's actually Commissioner Mudge has come to, I think I'm trying to remember she's come to us with a request for a proclamation for wildland prevention, fire prevention month in May. And also, I think she wanted to meet with the chief and I about a possible financial contribution. But I did want to point out, Councilmember Green needs to leave right at 8. So I didn't know if you wanted to check in with her to see if there's anything else she wanted.
If we can take a pause, I do want to say one more thing.
Dana, do you have anything last words for us before you have to go? She may have already gone. It's possible. Dana, if you can hear me, if you want to speak, just unmute and let us know. In the meantime, Max.
I don't want to speak, but I am going to apologize that I will have to check out at 8.
Okay. Thank you. Max, you had another thought.
Yeah, well, just to your point about the fire department, right? The fire department is a municipal structural fire department with a very fledgling wildland department for all intents and purposes behind what a wildland fire department is. I hesitate to say this, but I mean, I have more qualifications than any single person in that fire department when it comes to wildland qualifications, period.
Okay.
And so, yes, they're learning, they're growing, but I wouldn't consider them, Chief Daly does a great job. Chief McCann does a great job. I'm just saying that when it comes to wildland urban interface, they're not the experts or they're not the professionals that
They
they.
usually go out on wildland fires, not urban interface.
Well,
I
no,
would
it's
say-
still wild and urban interface is plenty of
I would
parts
say
of wildland fire.
Captain McCann and Engineer Nickman are both certified engine bosses. And we have a third person who is about to reach certification. So they certainly, have done a lot.
Well, that's,
I think the reason we were gonna meet with Chief Daly is to find out where the money was going to come
Okay.
from, not the expertise,
Okay.
but the request for money. The question always is, whose budget and where is that coming from? Because I looked through the budget, there was a potential request for money, and I looked through the budget and it was not budgeted. So then I said I would like to meet with Chief Daly to find out where that money is gonna come from. If the city agrees to it, where would it come from?
yeah, and it does cost a lot of money. And to have that strategic, like where you're actually gonna place that wildland urban interface. And the only reason why I say that is that just even like yesterday, when I went out for an after work ski, Colorado is at its historically driest conditions in the 140 years of recorded history. While we had snow, the Front Range got nothing but wind. Our fuel moistures up here are at, even with this weather, is still really, really low. And we've just been very lucky in the last 10 years in Leadville that we haven't had a large fire. It's not if, it's when, and I think we need to really do a good job supporting the county on any sort of WUI endeavors they have, financially or otherwise. But it's just something that, I mean, and I brought up yesterday's ski because I went out there, cloudy, it's hot powder, it's damp powder, right? You're trying to ski. That sun came out and it was like a death ray. I mean, it was so hot and intense. And what's even crazier, if you've been outside a lot, you have these super intense sun, and then the wind comes up and just sweeps all that moisture away, and then the sun comes back out and just bakes it all, and the wind is just sweeping it away. I mean, it is, I'm just really nervous for the high country, and heck, we had a fire just south of, near Granite already this year. And it burned up to snow line. And so that's not a good sign. The end.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think this is as you suggest, it's expensive and it's very time consuming. And what a crew can do in a summer is not that much. I mean, yeah, and what you're talking about in terms of the trees, County Road 4 is just dense forest all the way down to the railroad tracks. It just is, and so, and County Road 11 is the same way. And Chief Daly wanted to do some work there about 4 years ago, and he got shot down in flames on County Road 11. They just wouldn't allow it. And I think it was County Road 4 also. He wanted at least do remediation on the sides, even in the county right of way. And I mean, now they've kind of changed, but they wouldn't allow it.
Yeah, we need to fragment our forests so there's actually defensible places or
Right,
places we can try to slow the growth if that happens.
And so, as we talk, get into the 2023 budget, that may be a serious consideration in your conversations with the county. And, what can we commit?
And it doesn't necessarily mean treatments. It also could be community outreach, having folks treat their properties, coming up with grants to help those property owners do
Get
that.
a chipper.
Get a chipper, get a big chipper and somebody that can actually work on when a chipper breaks, because that is a large piece of equipment that can pretty much, feed them to the pigs. You
All
can
right.
just, do a chipper.
Thank you.
You got it.
Anybody else who's had a random thought that's come out of this conversation they'd like to speak to? Tracy?
I'm good.
Christian? Cisco? Ken?
I'm all set. I just missed my pedicure.
I'm so sorry.
Well, the agenda said 7:30. So
Did it really? So you had a pedicure for 7:30?
Yeah,
Yeah, well.
7:35.
And Max, you feel okay?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you all very much. This has been remarkable. In the notes I've taken, some things that really resonate, and I love, the direction we're going. Lori, any last thoughts?
What we'll probably do is try and revisit this as we get closer to the end of the year and see how we're doing on our goals. I think they're specific and measurable, and we've got some good timeframes. So I think we can complete a lot of this, if not all of this.
Do you think that we'll have a strategic planning session scheduled sometime in the summer,
Yes,
whether June or later?
yes, I may owe Christy June an email. I know we were talking about June/July. So we'll get that as soon as we can and talk to you all about dates, because I know that's vacation, time. So I'll get those out as soon as I can.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right. Well, it is 8:02 and the city council meeting is adjourned.
No, you didn't.
Whoa.